welcome to Beyond the Talking Points with Josh Jennings and David Riley. We are pleased to have Josh Jennings back from his exciting mobile unit from last week where he never reported in, but we'll let him...
you were doing such a great job. I didn't think that I really needed to call in and give any advice. And,
I knew I'd convert you yet, so...
But I'm proud to see that you got blue on.
Yeah, well, this is 2 weeks in a row. I wanted to memorialize your absence, and then I wanted to welcome you back with style. So
yeah,
I've worn blue.
I thought maybe I had saw Hillary Clinton this week in a pantsuit similar to that, and I thought maybe you.
Yeah, I was trying to honor her with her pantsuit selection. That's exactly right. However, I am.
That's not what the show's about. But I am glad to be back, and I went to Mayberry. Not only did I go to the beach, I went to Mount Airy, North Carolina, where, Andy Griffith, that was the show. Mayberry was based off that town.
Do they have the statue of Don Knotts there?
No. They have a statue of Andy and Opie carrying the fishing poles. They've got a replica jail, courthouse, Wally's service station. And it's pretty neat. And, the really unique thing about it is I asked they have this great downtown area. I mean, it's just an old-fashioned downtown. Puts you a lot in mind of South Pittsburgh. And so we were shopping downtown there. And so this week, of course I'm not at Mount Airy this week, but this week starts Mayberry Days, which is the festival for the Andy Griffith Show in Mount Airy.
It should not surprise me that exists, but it does.
Well, listen at this. This guy owned a shop. My wife and I went in there, and she bought a dress. And anyway, we got their life story because my wife likes to talk, And I asked him, I said, so is next weekend really your big weekend where you make all your money? And he said, well, we'll have between 50 and 60,000 people here next weekend.
Wow.
And I said, really? And he said, yeah, but that's not our big festival. And I said, what in the world is Mount Airy's big festival? And he said, in October, we have the Autumn Leaves Festival, and we'll have between 275 and 300,000 people in this little town.
Holy smoke.
And I said, there's 3 hotels. I said, where are these people? He said, people stay up to an hour away and drive in just to come to this festival.
So trees trumps Opie. That's unbelievable.
Can you believe that?
I really can't.
I would rather see Opie and Andy and Otis. But it was great. They have a museum. If you ever get a chance to go, it's $6 to get in the museum. And
I thought you were going to tell me it's $6 to get in town.
That might be a good idea. Yeah, but anyway, we got a guest. I'll talk more about my vacation. We got a guest. Who is our guest, David?
Well, Ms. Alisha Yockey, and I don't almost hesitate. Raconteur.
Now you know why I didn't want to open.
Publishing, and she is also one of its authors. But I wanted to bring her in. Now you're centered here in Tennessee.
I am.
And
where at?
I just moved to Murfreesboro.
Oh yeah, good town.
And now tell us a little bit, kind of your personal story as a writer and trying to get that first book published, and kind of some of the challenges that might have led to your own publishing house.
Well, it was really an uphill battle. I felt like I was Beatrix Potter, Dr. Seuss, because it took 3 years for me to get published. And granted, I wasn't really doggedly persistent on it. At the time that I finished my first book, I was still in college. I was still working on a bachelor's. I was working part-time at Air Force Base. And I was driving between Manchester and Murfreesboro, so there's a lot of commuting in there. Yeah. And so I was just kind of like throwing query letters into the wind whenever I had a chance to do so. And I wasn't really paying much attention to it. And then I sent the book to my other mother. I have 3 women in my life that have adopted me as a daughter over the years. And she called me up and she said, Alisha, why is this not published? And now this is a retired Air Force captain, mind you. And I said, yes, ma'am, I'll get on that. So started being more persistent after that point because I figured, this is a woman that does not know how to praise. So if she was liking it's good. Yeah. So I started looking more into it, and I didn't really get much more headway. And then I went to Utah to get another degree. And about that point, ebooks took off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I had a Nook at the time, and I thought, well, maybe I can do it as an ebook because they didn't charge anything.
Yeah.
They would take 30% commission off of every book sold. And I thought, okay, I could do that. Free's good. I could do free. So I spent 6 months figuring out how to format an ebook.
Yeah.
Because
it's
different.
trick.
It was totally different. There was no manual. There was no blog. There was nothing instructional-wise on how to do this. Fortunately, I have 2 friends that are very geeky who were able to help me figure out the techie aspects of it because I was about to lose my mind. HTML coding and JavaScript, and I was like, I barely know the basics here. But we eventually got it into an ebook form. I did the artwork for the front cover, and then I kind of threw it onto the internet. I saluted it, wished it luck, and I went back to school because I was going to school and working full time.
Sure.
Usual thing. That thing went international in 3 months.
Wow.
I have no idea why. To this day, I can't figure it out because I just put together a very quick website and kind of notified friends and family. Okay, it's up. Wish it luck. And then I didn't do anything else. I'm terrible at PR.
Well, just say that it was a great book.
It was an awesome book, apparently.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was making more off the book than I was working. And I was working as a paralegal, so that's saying something.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. So I thought, well, heck, I can work in my pajamas.
Yeah.
Who can't do that? So, yeah, I went back to Tennessee at that point. I was tired of freezing in Utah anyway. And, got my bunny slippers on, started working on the book. And that's when things got interesting. I had people walking up to me, complete strangers, mind you, who did not know me from Eve, and talk to me about publishing. I thought, is there a neon sign on me somewhere? How do they know to talk to me? And I kept getting war story after war story about how they signed these adhesion contracts and how they couldn't get out of them and how the books belonged to this publishing house.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. So one night after dinner, I pulled my brother aside and I pitched the idea of opening a publishing house to him. And he said, sis, this is probably the best business plan I've heard all year, but I have just one condition. I said, okay, what's that? He said, you cannot do the math. I'm like, okay. He goes, I'll be your accountant. I'm like, I'm good. Yeah, we're good.
Amen. Bring it.
Yeah, I'm famous in the family. I can't add 2 + 2. Not with the calculator, not with the Excel spreadsheet. I'm bad at math, really bad at math. So, yeah, we started the publishing house at basically February 2012, almost 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we've been in business for a while. So since then, I've gained people. I've gained a main editor. She's one of my very good friends from college. Her degree is very similar to mine. I've gained a PR person, Sally. Sally Singles. Yeah. Who's, I'm pretty sure, a bulldog in a previous life. Because she doesn't give up until she gets her way.
That's good for a PR person.
Yeah, really.
No, she's got exactly the right personality for it.
Yeah.
I don't. That's why I'm glad to have her.
Better to have her for you than against you.
Yeah.
So that was so you wrote, the first book was ebook.
Yeah, we actually make most of our sales through ebooks.
Yeah.
Now, at first, it was kind of uneven. Like, the ebooks were way higher than the paperbacks. Now, they've since kind of come more into an equilibrium. Not quite even, but closer to that.
So how many books have you written since then?
21.
Wow. How many years has that been?
4.5 years.
21 books in 4.5 years. That's booking it. No pun intended.
You couldn't resist that.
Now, tell me, what is your comfortable genre? What have you been doing?
Most of the time, I write young adult fantasy.
Okay.
I do have exceptions to that. Because I had so many people coming to me and asking questions on how I did what I did, I actually sat down and wrote a manual to explain the whole process to them. It's called Practical Publishing. It's only like $2. It's just because by the time that I get through explaining everything, it takes me 3 hours.
Yeah.
And parts of it are very technical. If they don't understand coding, then they don't really catch all of it. So if they got something to reference back to, it's easier for them. I do talk to them into usually coming back to my publishing house at certain points, though, because I'm like, look, it's $50 for us to format the ebook for you.
Yeah.
It takes us 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And like, the week it might take you.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, $50 sounds good.
Sounds like a good deal.
Yeah.
Well, what made you decide that you wanted to be an author? Have you always known it?
Basically.
Yeah.
I had people who tried to talk me out of it over the years.
Really?
Well,
Other authors?
no, I had a lot of people try to talk me into being an engineer
Mm-hmm.
because my father's an engineer and I kept working at Air Force bases with him. But I kept trying to explain to them, I cannot do the math. You do
Back
not,
to the math. Yeah.
You do not want me sending a rocket into space. Bad things will happen. So, yeah.
End up Texas somewhere. Right.
Won't be good.
So it was just you always knew.
Always
that
knew. Yeah, but my mother grew up in Fairyland on Lookout Mountain.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I blame it on that.
Perhaps. Maybe a tie.
Yeah,
Well,
maybe.
now you said adult fantasy, but now from what I'm gathering, yours are exceptionally family friendly. I mean,
Yes.
they're you don't delve into any dark magic and stuff like that at all.
Well, I mean,
So-
the bad guys do, but
Yeah.
the good guys don't. No, I was trying to write what I myself wanted to read when I was 13, 14, 15 and couldn't find. Because when I was a young adult fiction did not exist.
Yeah.
You had Hardy Boys, Nancy Drews. And that was pretty much the only things I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I dove into my dad's sci-fi books when I was 13. Gave him a minor heart attack. He actually went through and stacked them. This was the stack I could read now. This is the stack I could read when I was 30. Yeah.
Besides yourself, who's your favorite author?
I have several.
Sarah.
Yeah.
You've got to have one favorite.
No.
Who are you
Can I
reading
give you
now?
top 5?
Top 5. Well, I'll take top 5.
Okay. Lewis McMaster Bujold is a favorite.
Uh-huh.
David Weber. David
Okay.
Eddings. I really enjoy Aaron Elkins, although he's more mystery than...
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh gosh, if I had to choose a 5th person. That's really hard.
This
You were
is
the one who wanted to give the top 5. No, just kidding. Good authors.
Yeah, they are very good authors, and they're very prolific, which helps because I read at the speed of light, so I get through a series too quickly. It's kind of sad.
Well, I used to be a pretty well-paced reader, and now I've recently had a career change, and I'm having to go through technical manuals, and I'm like, this will ruin my reading forever and ever and ever.
There's a difference there, though.
Well, but I've actually gone
wanna
back
read.
to read for pleasure,
Yeah.
and I still find
Oh,
myself hanging up on. I'm expecting. I don't know what I'm expecting, but I'll scan through 4 pages and realize I've been mumbling the words, but I haven't retained any. I have no idea what just happened. But
You brought a book with you
I did.
because
yes,
you've got a series.
I do.
And what's the name of that series?
The series is called Kingmakers. Should I stick it on the table over here?
Are you sure?
Yeah.
And
So-
what's it about?
This is kind of different from your usual fantasy. Most of the time they have established kingdoms and you've got rivalries or you've got, some kind of rebellion or something along those lines. This series, they actually are creating a country from scratch.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So the main people have decided that they are done with the empire that they're part of. They're just sick of the whole thing. So they split off and just declare their own kingdom. And they have a ton of people coming in because they're also sick and tired of the old rules. But when they get in there, they will not have anything to do with the old rules. Even if some of the laws were good, they
didn't want any part of it.
didn't want any part of it. So the new king is forced to literally create a government and laws and everything from
wow.
scratch. So it was
and
What's
so-
Really
the
different.
the time, the era that it's based in?
most fantasy is usually somewhere in the medieval area. Yeah, this is kind of the same way.
Similar.
And
Yeah.
so, what number in the series is this one?
This one is 1.
Okay.
Book 2 is Arrows of Promise. And book 3 will be Arrows of Rebellion, I think.
We're still deciding.
Well, we kind of can bounce between 2 or 3 different titles. So we like Rebellion the best so far.
I see.
Yeah.
Now, is the Is that your most recent book, the third book in the series?
That's the one I'll be working on next.
Oh, okay. Now you just finished a new book that was kind of a new direction for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I just wrote an urban fantasy. Most of mine are not urban, called Call to Quarters.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's based out of a little place called Tehachapi, California. It's not very big. It's about the size of South Pittsburgh, actually. Yeah, it's not very large. Most of the town supports an Air Force base that's nearby. And they do a lot of rocket testing, shuttle testing, that kind of thing. Right. So you're not allowed to live within a certain radius of the Air Force Research Lab. They've had test cells explode before.
Ah.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be near that.
No, they keep a certain distance, which is why Tehachapi is like 45 minutes away where most people choose to live. Now, I used to work there for about 2 years. My father worked there for many years.
I see. I was going to ask.
Yeah. So when I was thinking about trying to, base the story out of a certain place, I thought, well, heck, let's just make this easy on my brain and choose a place I know. So I went with that.
Save you a lot of background
Save
research.
Me a lot of background. Yeah, and I had a lot of fun in this one because I was able to put my friends and family into it. So I made them engineers and I made them techs, and so sometimes I would call them and go, good guy, bad guy, which one do you prefer to be? They're like, oh, we get a choice? I'm like, yeah, shoot.
Yeah.
But sometimes they chose to be a bad guy, which kind
I
of
was going to say, I bet you had a surprising.
I was in a school play one time. I was the bad guy. That's the best play. I enjoyed the most.
I mean, you're a Democrat on this show. You're still the bad guy.
You're
welcome, audience.
Yeah.
I'm going
no comment.
I'm really glad you're back.
Boy, I know. I stepped right in it. Okay, back to the book.
But,
well, I got a question.
Okay.
So, David had said a little earlier that it said everybody has one good book in them. So, if somebody wants to author a book, how do you start?
I have a lot of people who ask me that question, and especially if they've never tried to write before.
Yeah.
The hardest thing to do is figure out how to do good writing. So when I was brand new to this idea, was really trying to be better as a writer, I took my top 5, I started with 5, I think I actually graduated to 10, authors, and I tore apart their writing. I figured out what it was about it that I liked. So I copied over their writing techniques, what it was about, introduction to character, introduction to scenery. I really just examined their writing styles for about 6 months. And then I discovered that if I wanted to write like a particular author, I would read a few pages from one of their books first, and then I would sit down to write. And it would influence my own writing style, which helped.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, of course, my writing's grown since then. I don't write anything like my original style, but...
We call that evolving, right?
Yeah. Good for you.
But that's usually my first step for people. And, sometimes they work really well with an outline. My brain only recently decided that it liked outlines. Before, if I tried to write one, I wouldn't finish the book.
Really?
I get bored. Because I knew how it was going to end. And if I knew how it was going to end, then what was the purpose of me working on it?
Well, I will confess that I have made efforts at writing, and we were talking about before the show, is I'll get to a certain point, and I work with the outline because I'm OCD, I don't know. But I would have a...
Go ahead.
I would have a general... I wanted to step on your line before you got to jab me back.
I was close. I was so close. Okay, go ahead.
But I'd have an idea of where I was starting and where I was finishing, and then it was kind of that pivotal plot, change that you had to kind of get on the downward spiral towards, the explosive conclusion. And what advice do you have for people that get stuck in, okay, I got started.
She already told you, don't have an outline. You already knew how it ended.
So erase the outline.
Scratch that out.
Well, sometimes the outline is binding. Sometimes you have to go, okay, that did not work. Let's rework the outline. I've actually started doing outlines more often these days because it helps me keep track of all the details.
Yeah,
Especially if you're working on a mystery like my last book was. It was mystery, urban fantasy.
I love a good mystery.
Oh, it
with
was
a murder.
It was so hard to work on the mystery
Don't
because
look at me.
I kept trying to figure out the clues and the order of the clues without giving too much away. So I had to have an outline for that one. But usually I get stuck on page 50. It's almost like a magic trick. I always get stuck on page 50. Drives me crazy. And I've discovered that it's usually one of three things that stops me. There's something about the character I don't understand, so that I don't know how the character is going to react to the situation to keep it going. Or it's something about the plot that's not working. Sometimes it's just not going the right direction. Sometimes I've kind of painted myself into a corner, but it's something about the plot that doesn't really make sense, and I have to rework that. Or, this is the easiest one to fix, it's something technical that I haven't figured out yet.
Oh, okay.
Give you a good example. I was working on The Lost Mage, and I got my people, they're on the run, bad guys are chasing them. I got them all the way down to a coastline, and I was like, okay, I'm going to have them hop on a ship, and they're just going to sail up the coastline. And then I stopped. I have 2 adults, 1 child, 2 horses. I'm like, what kind of ship can they sail by themselves for like 3 weeks? So I had to stop and do research.
Oh, wow.
Schooner is the answer, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Out of personal experience, when I've gotten stuck multiple times, I sometimes allow myself to take a deviation where I will more fully develop, the history of my characters, and I end up getting very detailed because I'm so intimidated about whatever I've run into in the book that now I've spent, 3 weeks on dossiers obviously of my characters, and now I'm bored with the character. Obviously you got to have a little bit of detail, especially if you're planning on writing more than one book using these characters. You want to make sure that you don't have anything that contradicts. Do you have any advice on how to keep a character fluid and interesting without getting bogged down in the details? Does that make sense?
That does make sense. I do have profiles on all my characters. In fact, I sometimes have an Excel spreadsheet if I have multiple characters that are going to be in a series. And it is hard to get that magic just enough quotient into the book. Sometimes, the easiest thing to do is say, okay, this is my character now, but he's going to have to grow. So I don't plan every little nuance of what he's going to be like in the very beginning, because I know that he's going to change. He needs to change in order to be a dynamic. So sometimes if you've gotten the full dossier, then go through and say, okay, this, and this needs to happen later. This is what he needs to grow into.
Okay. Because I
Add
think,
that to your outline.
well, I do think, because after I dedicate X amount of time, and I'm just speaking for myself, once I've dedicated that much time to developing the character, then I go in and I start writing the story to the dossier instead of the other way around, and I'm so regimented into what I've done with the character development or the character history that I don't allow for much development. So
I can't remember what you may know, but I read about an author, and I can't remember the author, but they would it seemed like they would just write a chapter at a time. They would sit down and then they would take 40 chapters and somehow tie it all into a story. And I can't remember, it would all have the same, but I can't recall who it was because I write better than I speak. I speak Jasper, every time when I get home, my wife says, your grammar was incorrect, such and such here. But if I write it, I can catch it, because I said that
Control
doesn't make
Z.
sense. Yeah. But spell check, grammar check. But I was reading a book. I was reading on about how authors wrote books, because that's always intrigued me. Like John Grisham, for instance. It's one book a year. That's all he does. He's got to where he does some kid stuff now. But I thought, what really makes these people just sit down and come up with? Of course, all of his is sort of the same. It's just a little different. But
well, he kind of wandered around to the.
I mean, I love
the
his,
series.
I love his legal thrillers, but you know what they're going to be. You know,
the arc is not exactly a shock.
But you know, it's always intriguing because your mind has got to be just full of
Characters,
everything.
plots,
Yeah.
ideas.
Everything.
Yeah.
And
Because you have to make me
care.
see it.
Yeah. Well,
It's so much harder than what people realize.
Oh, yes.
yeah, I would invite everybody seriously, no matter what you think you have, you don't ever have to tell us all, but sit down and try to write a book. I don't care if it's a short story, I don't care if it's War and Peace, but sit down and try and write a book because it's a very telling exercise, I think, academically and personally, and I think it perpetually exposes my shortcomings. Yeah, okay, all right.
We noticed that on last week's rerun.
I was going to give you a
Yeah,
wide
you let
open.
me give me enough time. No, I agree 100% because you have got to create everything
Everything.
Yeah.
out
Everything.
of thin air.
Yeah.
And it has to be logical and it has to be consistent.
And you can't
And
take for
compelling.
granted that I know what you're thinking.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
have to let me know.
That's why we have editors, honestly. That's the reason why I have a main editor is because I think that I've explained everything perfectly, that I have good descriptions in there, I have good, character development, and my editor will come back to me and go,
Who is this?
what? How do we get here?
what does this building look like? Is this supposed to be a street or on the ship? I'm like, oh dear. Didn't explain that as well as I thought. Okay.
It made perfect sense in my head.
Well, because to you know what's supposed to happen.
Sure,
Yeah, you're just filling in the gaps as you read, so you don't see your own mistakes.
Yeah.
Which is why when somebody tells me, well, I've read the book like 12 times, I've caught everything, I'm like, no, dear, you haven't. That's sweet of you to think so, though.
Yeah.
But you haven't.
Well, and now from your first book to now, what would you say is your greatest? I mean, what do you see as your most profound personal improvement in your writing?
It honestly took me 9 books to feel like I really had a firm grip on how to write a book. And I say that because Kingslayer was the book that broke all sales records in my publishing house. Everybody just loved that book. It was amazing. It was actually the first book I turned into an audiobook for that reason. Yeah. And it was partially because I finally figured out the rhythm of the book. I knew when to add tension in there. I knew when to add a little bit of humor. I knew when the characters needed to take a break and just do character building for a second. So I finally felt like I had the rhythm of it down, and that's really the hardest thing for me to try to explain to somebody else.
Yeah.
Is the rhythm of it, because
Because if a book doesn't have the good rhythm,
Yeah.
it's like watching a badly directed movie. The pacing is
terrible.
off.
Yeah.
You can't get into it.
All the money in the world won't save that movie.
Nope.
that's what when we opened, we just got back from vacation. That's what my wife and I always do. We get an audiobook and listen to it on the way wherever we're going. So sometimes the book's so great that we're sitting there at the hotel that night and it
Won't
says,
check in.
what are we going to do? And let's just go out in the parking lot and listen to that. And we've done that. I mean, that's no joke. We really do that. But we got one coming back home, and I said, this is the worst book in the world. I'm not even listening to it anymore. I'm sick of listening to it. Can we do something else? And
Was
my
it Bill
wife was in
O'Reilly's
it.
book?
I don't even remember. It was so bad I didn't want to remember. But the pace was off. She was just, this author was all over the place, and I'm driving and I'm thinking, I was just exhausted. But you're right. If it doesn't have the right rhythm, it's no
Now,
good.
from your 9th book to your 21st book, once you kind of got into your comfort zone there, did they come much quicker then, or